Hello, and welcome everyone to this week's episode of Behind the Screen. I'm your host and Dungeon Master, Cranio Dad. I like to take a little bit of time every single Monday, sometimes Tuesday, depends on how things go for my family, to talk about the things that happened on the during the Ghost of Saltmarsh campaign from Saturday. So I'm going to launch our intro video in just a second. Then after that, we're going to dive on in and we're going to talk a little bit more about Ghost of Saltmarsh and how things went on my side. See you guys in just about a minute. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So, I really do like that intro. We will be adding some more stuff to it in the time to come. However, let's talk about Saturday, and excuse me while I adjust my microphone, which apparently has been causing a lot of problems since Saturday. So, we will look more into that, and I'll actually listen to the video today and see how things go. So, Saturday. We had a game where we picked up where we had last left off, and I really love ending on cliffhangers. And I ended last week with the players having a secret door open and a skeletal alchemist walking out and pointing and saying some words in the direction of the players. And then life happened, right? So from my side of the screen, let me kind of tell you guys how things are going to go. Because I want to make sure that you have an understanding of what this portion, this little thing that I do is. This is going to be about 30 to 45 minutes, maybe give or take a little bit. And what I like to do is I like to dissect things, do an autopsy of what happened, and then I want to talk about how the players what they had done, and how that's going to affect, and do a little bit of future planning. I do my best to keep this spoiler free for things to come. I will talk obviously about things that have happened. This is going live before the video goes live on YouTube, but you can always watch on video on demand down below here on Twitch. So thank you for those who have been watching. Feel free to watch it on Twitch and get caught up. And it's also on YouTube. And you can probably find that channel down below as well here on Twitch. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive on into... Where's my thing? Where's my thing? There's my thing. Yep. Let's dive on in to the autopsy. So, we picked up exactly where we left off, and in true form, we were waiting for setup, and we had a player who reached out to us and let us know that they were running late. They were stuck in traffic, and they were on their way home. And I know the area roughly where this player lives, and it's very notorious for really bad traffic. So I had to quickly pull out of my DM holster some of the devices that I use. And there was some other things that the Skeletal Alchemist was supposed to do at the very beginning of the game. However, what he wound up doing instead was casting Banish, which is a spell he didn't even have access to. And so I was able to make it to where the players still could continue on. I didn't want to have some awkward time where the other players had to carry another player. I don't like playing that way. And it's just it's not good game in my opinion. I think that there's If it's a long-term absence, that's a whole other ball game. But a short-term absence, I'm not too worried about. Even a full session, I'm not too worried about. I'll find a way to make a player disappear and make them come back. But the player was, he was letting us know, and I'm not even faulting that that happens. I mean, there's been days that I have been worried. To be fair, I had sent the players a message letting them know that I was going to be running late because we were coming from the other side of the state, and I didn't think we were going to even make it in time for me to run the game, let alone make the initial call, let alone run the game. So they were already playing a player down, but they handled it extremely well. One of the things that I really like about this party is there's a lot of things that I like, but one of the things that I like is the way they handle combat. They have a really good knack at covering and moving without having to say a lot. They're very mindful of space, very mindful of action, very mindful of distance, and they do a really good job of surrounding whatever it is they need to work on and taking care of it. Now that's going to get a little bit harder the further along through the story that we go, but it's a good thing to see them do now. So they, with no real major issues, they dealt with the Skeletal Alchemist fairly well. I believe that one player fell, which is kind of par for the course for right now. But again, they're level 2, and I think that they are scaled to the right level. This is actually designed for 4 level 1s, but when looking at the stat blocks, it just doesn't make sense. Now, I screwed up, and I cast Color Spray, which I thought was actually Prismatic Orb. And then I realized that there was no reason that Prismatic Orb would be at this level. So I thought that that's later on, I thought that I had killed a couple of characters, but so it's all about level balancing and keeping things like that in mind. So again, that happened at the end of the night, but the Skeletal Alchemist, I think, really well. They're doing a really good job of investigating. But one thing that I have noticed is that they're not asking a lot of questions. I think that they're in the mode, and I can completely get it from the player's point of view, that they're just told to go clear out the house. They don't know why, but they get there and they find that the house definitely is not haunted, that there's actually people that are there, and they're not asking a lot of questions. Now, granted, they haven't had a lot of time because from the moment they entered combat, it's been a lot of combat back to back with very little time to rest in between. So, but all that aside, they dealt with the Skeletal Alchemist. They found a lot of really interesting things that I think they're going to come back to later. Not go back to the room, but I think they're going to come back and think about later. Some of the items they picked up being gold, the mention of the Philosopher's Stone, things along those lines. And I used the time of having the player who wasn't able to be there, and I kind of made banishment my own. I made it to where he was actually teleported to a different plane, so he could see things that weren't really there, and he spent some time in what felt like, just a little bit of time for him was a while for the players, and he realized that there was a secret passage, and he's the one who found the secret passage that led them down the cavern. Now, I knew what was down the cavern, obviously, and I knew that by them going that route, that they were not going to go back to investigate the top part of the house, so I had already made the decision that some of the things that they missed were going to be following them down, because the sounds of combat would be reverberating throughout the house. That doesn't mean that everything came down. There was only 2 things, but that does mean that I did move them because I knew that they would be going that way. So then our players are going through the cavern, and by the roll of the dice, they went a direction, and by character placement, I didn't even get the opportunity to let them roll perception or anything like that. They put themselves where they were, and green slime fell on them, which does a fair amount of acid damage. It could cause a player death. It does enough damage it does it pretty rapidly as well. It does 1d6 when it first hits, and then does 2d10 every round that it is on that person, and a round is about 6 seconds. It will destroy any metal that is used to try to remove it. It does additional damage if you use bare skin to try to pull it off. You're supposed to use magical weapons or stones and rocks to get it off. And so there was a lot of creative planning that went into trying to actually save the player that it fell on, and I was very happy to see that. But that kind of set the tone for the evening. While that was going on, they were making enough noise that it triggered a set of the guards that were already aware that there were people in the house that were already watching to take up positions and fire. The party split as a way to try to get away from the slime. And as they were splitting, here come the arrows. There was a lot of pain that went on, a lot of near player death. But what I like to do is when I can see that the players are getting really stressed out, I like to have fun in those moments. I like to take it and add that stress factor, but then add a moment of relief. So I knew, there were going to be times based on some of my roles that nothing was going to happen to the player, but I wanted them to have an impact on the story, and so I made it to where they had enemies damage enemies, or a weapon would break, or things along those lines. But I teed it up in such a way that the player wasn't sure if something was happening to them or even really what was going on. And I realized that was rather suspenseful for the player, for a couple of the players. But the thing is that I believe that they also understood why. I think that in the moment it was stressful, but immediately thereafter it was a sigh of victory / relief. So the players then continued and moved through the cavern because they really didn't have a choice. As they were turning to leave, they kept getting attacked and more attacked and more attacked. And I wound up bringing the whole cavern to them. There's a couple things that they triggered just by sound and by action. There's a few things that I triggered by time. I had a little table that was going based on how many rounds and how much sound and how many rounds of combat and how many blocks and how many hits, because hits don't make as much noise as a block, and when a weapon breaks it makes a very distinctive sound. And this is a underground cavern that has two openings, one into a house and one out to the sea, so sound's going to echo. So I had to do a little bit of just mental gymnastics to try to keep things in check. And so I had a little table that I was checking off as things were going along, and they wound up triggering everything. But I wasn't too afraid of that. However, it did look really dire for a while. It's at this point that they meet the big bad evil guy for the first half of chapter 2, because again, for those who are following along at home, chapter 1 is nothing more than topography, politics, people, places, things, and what is Saltmarsh. Chapter 2 is where the actual first thing start, the first part of the story. So they are closing out the first half of chapter 1 with when we kick off next week. It's at this point that the big bad evil guy, again, I cast color spray, and I thought it was prismatic spray or prismatic orb, which does a heck of a lot of damage. And so when I rolled 52 damage, I was like, wow, I basically almost, if not, I double killed 2 of the players. And then I was just thinking about it, and something wasn't sitting right. I happened to look, and I had to actually check the spell, and I realized that I was wrong. And thankfully I was. It was that it blinded them. It didn't kill them. So that quick correction, I think, changed the tempo of the game, because it went from really on top of things to really exciting to really stressful to really dire to really awesome. And what ensued was collectively probably about another 45 minutes straight of combat. And it wasn't, I don't want you to think when you hear 45 minutes of combat that it is, oh my God, they're still fighting. There was constantly new elements being added into the combat. There were new players that were being brought in, new pieces, new angles, new issues, because they were literally triggering everything. And it is meant to be a very long slog of a combat round. There's no place for them to really rest. They were already, all the people in the cavern were already alerted that there were people in the house. Because of the screams that they heard, and then the combat that they heard, and then the combat that they heard as the people were moving through. So there was a lot of near death. In fact, if you're watching this live on Twitch right now, the players themselves have not reset their health for the long rest, which they'll be doing probably over the next couple of days. So if you're watching live on Twitch right now, you can look on your screen, and on the D&D Beyond handout, you can see where people ended. And we have, Deluge at 10 out of 17, Calder at 24 out of 24, Oddity at 1 out of 14, Rogelio at 3 out of 15, and Circes at 18 out of 22. And that was after healing spells, on top of healing spells, on top of healing potions, on top of healing potions. I mean, it was rough. I think they blew through all of their healing potions that they had, and they walked in with, I think, 5 or 6, and they picked up a collection of another 3 or 4. They also picked up a couple of weird potions that they're not sure what they are. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, I am primarily a Sea of Thieves streamer at this point. I was primarily a D&D streamer, and then I found the game Sea of Thieves, and I fell in love with it. However, it is hilarious to me that in this cavern there are cloth and wine casks, which are 2 of the 3 elements for the majority of the merchant voyages in Sea of Thieves. The final element being the horrible plants that you can't see anything past while you're trying to walk. So I added some plants to the mix as potential finds. So they are now sitting on what would be the equivalency of, I don't know, 3 merchant voyages at level 30. But anyway, I found that hilarious to me because I didn't realize it the first few times I read through it. And then my wife was actually reading through the chapter to me one more time while we were carefully and cautiously avoiding all posted speed limits and driving across the state with our children in the back. And she read me this portion of the chapter again, and then it hit me while she was reading it that this is basically, it turns into almost like a merchant voyage. But that's where we ended. I ended with more of a scenic instead of cliffhanger, to where, you know, they were working their way into the cavern, and they could see the sea. And that's where we're going to pick up this week. So all in all, as an autopsy, I think the players did an extremely great, I mean, they did a great job, hands down, to be fair. They played one man down for the first 30 or so minutes for the first round of combat with the Skeletal Alchemist. I think they could ask some more questions of me, the DM, of the environment, of why they are there and what they are finding and what this all means. I imagine that's probably all going to come out in the beginning of next episode, this upcoming week. Or this upcoming weekend. So, all in all, it was another great episode by the players. I had a couple of screw-ups. They did an outstanding job. I love watching them RP. I love watching everything happen. We did have some technical glitches, and I'm going to be checking to see if we're still having the audio glitch, which is only partially due to my new vape. So that does this really cool thing. It causes my voice to drop for a little bit, and I like it. So, but anyway, apparently that was happening the entire time. It might still be happening now. I don't know. I'm not seeing anything in chat, so I'm going blind. However, all that being said, let's move on from the autopsy to what this all means. Planning and prep. So, this upcoming week, I have to wrap up the first half of the chapter with the things that they found. Be prepared to give them information that they are probably either going to ask about or that I'm going to impart to them because they need to know it before they head back to town. I imagine the players are going to either go back upstairs and deal with the second floor of the house, or they're going to go into town and talk to Varus Nightbreeze. There's really only a couple directions they could go. They could go a third direction, which I'm not even remotely planning for, but I'll do my best to be ready. What is going to be happening next, as spoiler-free, is that the city council is going to be getting involved and giving them another task to do. That's all I'm going to tell you guys. It's the second part of Chapter 2. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to what the players are going to bring to the table. Looking forward, this upcoming weekend is Father's Day, so I will still be playing, unless I hear otherwise from my players. Then I think we have some vacations and stuff coming up right around the corner, and then my daughter has surgery in about 5 weeks. So I'll be taking some time off. I'm still working with the players, as well as I'm trying to reach out to a couple other DMs to see if maybe somebody wants to step in and run a session for me, or if we're going to run a one-shot, or just take a week off, or 2. It depends on how my daughter's recovery is. But I'll still be streaming Sea of Thieves when she is not in surgery and not in recovery in the PICU, and when she is home safe and sound, because she'll be sitting right next to me in a chair that we just bought for her. So next week should be interesting. I want to see where the players take it. I want to see where they go. I want to see what happens. I know you guys do as well. Now, as some fun information, so I'm still doing the once we reach 5,000 bits during D&D, that I will be giving away a copy of Ghosts in Saltmarsh. that night. So the giveaway is already set up and ready to go. Once we hit 5,000 bits, as soon as the moment seems advantageous, I'm going to trigger that giveaway. So you must be live to watch. It's open to anybody who is watching. On top of that, I've purchased a ton of dice and dice bags. So I like being able to give things away. And I have a ton of bubble envelopes. So for the people who live in the United States, unfortunately, it's not going to be allowed for Canada just because the shipping is cost prohibitive for a small streamer. I'm looking into some other options for right now, but for people who live in the United States, if you're watching, and every 2,000 bits, I'm going to give away a set of dice. They'll be mailed out within a couple days of the stream, and all you gotta do is either help get us to 2,000 bits or be watching when we get 2,000 bits. 2,000 bits isn't, I mean, it's nothing to shake a stick at, and I appreciate it. But these bits are gonna go help help me fix a few things that I need for the stream in general. Maybe some better audio, maybe a little bit more RAM for my PC, stuff like that. And then once I get to that state, I have some pretty cool things I want to announce that I want to do with whatever money donations we receive from the stream. Because ultimately I do this because it's a passion, not because I expect to make money off of it. So once I get to where everything is warm and fuzzy, I've got some plans for down the line as to what I would like to do with any donations that we receive, and that way you guys will be having a impact on at least a portion of my life that isn't directly related to me. I know it sounds cryptic, but I want to talk about that once we get there. So all that being said, thank you to those who are here hanging out tonight. Thank you so much to those who watch us on video demand. I do appreciate the follows, the bits, and the subscribes. There is donations down below that does go to only helping this channel. It doesn't put food on my plate. It doesn't put gas in my car. It all goes to things to help this channel do better. Maybe get a better green screen. Maybe get some lighting adjustments. Who knows? We'll see. But thank you to all those who are hanging out. I really do appreciate it. With that, I'm going to launch a raid, and I will be streaming Sea of Thieves shortly and throughout the week. And then, as far as I know, we are planning on being here on Saturday, hopefully on time at 8 p.m. See you guys for the next session, and thank you so much for stopping by.